Where were you when Kennedy died?
Not even a concept. I wasn't even in the womb.
My parents weren't even alive yet.
Well, when the president got shot, I was on my way to San Diego, football game. When Bobby got shot, I was sitting in a car waiting for you guys so we can start this podcast. Welcome to It's Always Sunny in
That's really the intro you're going with?
the Florida Keys.
You were waiting a long ass time then, huh?
Yeah. Today we're going to be talking about Night Moves, directed by Arthur Penn.
Which, if you haven't seen this movie, then you probably have many questions about why he went
Yeah,
with
and
that.
not many people have seen this movie because this is not a super well-known movie at all.
I mean, I've never heard of it. Luke, have you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Nope. Not at all.
Yeah, no one's heard of this movie. You guys may have heard of Arthur Penn's other movies. His most famous movie is Bonnie and Clyde, but he also did Little Big Man and Mickey One.
Night Moves. But before we get to that, let's breeze through a little bit of news. To start off, this is actually very recent. As of today, this was like the last hour. We got some pretty shocking news that Liam Payne, the former member of One Direction, died. He was 31
Which
years
one
old,
was he?
and I'll be honest, I'm no One Direction expert, but he was 31 years old, and as of right now, what we know is that he fell from the third story of a hotel.
Jesus.
It was probably due to alcohol and or drugs, but again, this was like within the hour of we're recording this, so it's an ongoing investigation. But like, Jesus,
Rest in peace, Liam.
I
I'm not familiar with One Direction, so I can't really add.
I know they were a big
but
name
I
in
was
like the early 2010s, but that's about
I
it.
was a
There was like a
I
brief
wasn't
boy band revival in the early 2010s, and One
I
Direction
wouldn't
kind of
say I was a
spearheaded that.
fan of One Direction, but like I was a casual listener of their music. Like I never had their
Um,
merch or anything, but like I did care enough to actually see their documentary in theaters.
I always got thrown off by One Direction because like I heard like 3 or 4 songs from them and they all sounded like classic rock songs that I already knew. One of them was just straight up a cover because One Way or Another, that's a Blondie cover. Then they had this one song that was basically like Baba O'Reilly from The Who. Like they did that a couple times, so it was kind of weird because it sounded like classic like 2010s like overproduced pop. Like it was very clearly like homaging and riffing off of a bunch of like classic rock numbers, and that's an interesting style.
I know Lugia, you were never a fan by any
No, not
stretch.
at all. I'll admit, the only person I really knew from the band was Harry Styles, but that's just a name that appears everywhere. I didn't really know anybody else in the band, but that's still an unfortunate passing.
Yeah, I'll be
I knew
honest, like other than Harry Styles, I couldn't tell you who was who.
I knew Zayn Malik, but that was just because like I think it was the first one to go solo. Like about
Yeah, I
him, but
remember I remember everybody talking about him leaving back in high school.
yeah, and I
I was
remember
in high
like
school when it happened.
I think I remember like one of his songs, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Rest in peace, Liam.
rest in peace, Liam. Moving away and on to some lighter news. So, let's talk Nintendo for a second. So I know everybody is waiting for Nintendo to announce the big Switch successor, this whole year. Well, wish granted. They're changing things up a bit. We're getting an alarm clock.
Wow.
So, like, can we put Switch cartridges in there and play games on the clock?
No,
So,
but you can play Doom.
have you guys seen the Nintendo Alarmo reveal trailer?
I've seen a little bit of it. It's kind of whatever, to be honest. I mean, you get to choose from like Mario, Zelda, Splatoon, Animal Crossing
It's an
sounds,
it's a neat novelty, but not really much more than that.
and it costs like 100 something dollars. And why the fuck
Yeah,
would you pay that much for an alarm
no
clock?
thanks. No thank you. Like you get an alarm clock already installed on your phone. Like again, I get it for novelty's sake, but like $100? And as of right now, it's not even available worldwide. You can only get it if you're like a Nintendo subscriber and at the Nintendo store in New York.
You know, that actually sounds very Nintendo, considering that they never really reduced the price on their games.
I do have a question though. So apparently, the whole thing with this is that they're trying to make getting out of bed a game, which is cute. But like the way it goes is that like it plays an alarm like until you get up from bed. But couldn't you just cheese that by laying back down?
I don't know.
If you just
It was
pass
pretty.
out really super fucking quick.
I don't know. It was pretty easy to cheese the Poke Walker and a lot of other things. So I imagine.
I don't know, but
You guys are by the way, fun fact about the Poke Walker, it's apparently the most accurate pedometer ever made. Like
Really?
just period.
Hmm.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Nintendo just like did this just so like just as a gimmick for their remake of Pokemon Heart Gold. For their remake of Pokemon Gold, sorry.
No, it's funny. You say this is just an alarm clock. No, baby. This is an alarm clock with DLC.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Because there's going to be like 5 different themes, like a Mario, a Zelda, Pikmin, Metroid, and Animal Crossing. And they said at the
Pay
end
$5 and
we're going to be adding more later.
pay $5 and you get military time. Extra dollar,
Yeah,
daylight saving.
it's an alarm clock
You have to
that
pay for daylight
requires
savings.
connectivity to the internet to get DLC.
What the fuck kind of world do we
And
live in where you
I
need a
don't know if it's
clock to
paid
connect
for
to
or
the
not, but
goddamn internet?
I don't know. It's just imagine like in 1960. I hope we have flying cars in the future. 2024. Clock with DLC.
Look how far we've come.
Speaking of how far we've come, that in no way ties into anything. I just didn't know how to transition. So let's talk Rugrats for a second. We talked about the first 2 Rugrats movies a while back. We had fun. Well, this past week, Paramount announced Rugrats will be returning to theaters with a new live-action CGI hybrid movie. And this actually isn't new. This was first announced like 5 years ago, but nothing else came of it. This is just basically reconfirmation. I'm not gonna lie, I think this is gonna be another Minecraft movie situation, in that I don't think it's gonna be good, but the information we have about it has my attention by how weird it is. Because the director of this movie, his name is Jason Moore, and he's primarily worked in music projects, like he directed the first Pitch Perfect. And he's also a Broadway director. He directed the original productions of Shrek and Avenue Q on Broadway. And it's being written by 2 guys who mostly write SNL sketches, but like the sketches they've written are considered some of the best modern sketches. Like you know the Beavis and Butthead one with Ryan
Who's the
Gosling,
writer?
Mikey Day, and Streeter Siddell. They wrote the Beavis and Butthead sketch that so many people love. But they also wrote the script for Home Sweet Home Alone. So
Mixed bag.
yeah, very mixed bag. But the addition of Jason Moore as director and his background, it makes me think, are they going to try to harken back to the vibe of the original Rugrats movie? Because that was kind of a musical. A very unbalanced musical, but, you know, it had a fair amount of songs. So, are they going to try for something new here?
I
I
don't
have no
know.
fucking idea. But here's the big thing that confuses me. Why a live action CGI hybrid route for Rugrats? Because you look at the hybrid movies of yesteryear, on some level it makes sense because, you know, the main characters are like animals or mythical creatures or whatever. In Rugrats, everybody's human. So what, are
I guess they
the
want to
babies going to be
capture the
CGI?
zany style of the Rugrats, and they thought maybe
They don't
doing a
want
hybrid movie would be
they
a
don't
good
want
idea.
they don't want people to
But
think it's like baby geniuses. Trying to avoid baby geniuses
are the
comparisons.
babies going to be CGI and the adults human? Because that just raises further questions. If you're going to have everybody CGI, why not just make it a full animated film? Like, I don't understand why a hybrid is the way to go. Why would that work?
Unless it's the inverse, where everybody is live action, but the world around them is CG, like Minecraft.
But again, that doesn't make sense for Rugrats, because Rugrats was pretty down to earth. I don't know. Nothing about this makes sense to me, but again, it's a case where nothing makes sense, but I'm intrigued by where it's going to go.
I guess we'll just have to wait for a trailer and see.
They don't even have a release window. They just said, hey,
You said this
sometime in
was
the
announced
future.
5 years ago, and then nothing
This was
came up.
announced, yeah, this was announced in 2018. It was supposed to come out in 2021, and then we never heard from it again. Do you guys have anything to say about this?
Not really. I think we'll just have to wait for more information just to see what it's like. But like conceptually, I don't understand the live action approach.
I guess we'll just have to wait. Actually, one weird tidbit about this movie. Back, um, I remember hearing a rumor a few years ago that this movie was apparently potentially quietly canceled because of the Sonic movie, because they didn't want to deal with another controversy regarding how the character designs would be. That was just a rumor, though. But 5 years later, hey, it's still happening. That's all I got. I don't know. Weird Rugrats hybrid movie with music director. Weird. But anyway, speaking of stuff we've talked about before, Dogma. So this film notoriously has been in the grip of the Weinstein brothers for the past 25 years, and Kevin Smith has been trying to negotiate getting the rights back, but because they're horrible people, they wouldn't budge. Until recently, when apparently not Kevin Smith, but a different company bought the rights from the Weinsteins. They haven't specified who it is, but this company did talk with Kevin Smith, and apparently, Dogma is back in his control. He's planning on doing a theatrical re-release and a Blu-ray release next year. So, great news for Kevin Smith.
You think he'll ever make a sequel now?
He's teased it.
It's just great that this
Good
movie
for
that's
him,
been
yeah.
like locked in essentially copyright hell is finally coming back after God knows how long. Like this was like over 20 years ago, I think.
That does it for everything I wanted to talk about.
Anyway, Night Moves. So, I mentioned it earlier, but this was directed by Arthur Penn, who is honestly he's not talked about that much. Which is always kind of funny because most people, like from a film historical point of view, would probably consider him the one of the most important American filmmakers of all time, because Bonnie and Clyde is considered the first new Hollywood film, and if you New Hollywood is basically a film movement that has defined what movies are since. As in, most people very clearly define like there are movies before New Hollywood, and then there's New Hollywood after. We are still in the era of like New Hollywood's influence. When people think like old movies, it is basically every movie before Bonnie and Clyde, because Bonnie and Clyde and all the movies after it have a much more modern style. I feel like you could show people, Bonnie and Clyde and Night Moves nowadays, and they won't be thrown off. Versus, you show them on a West Side Story or something. Bye Bye Birdie, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang came out like the year after Bonnie and Clyde, and like Bonnie and Clyde has not aged a day. Chitty Chitty Bang Bang feels like very 1960s, you know? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I know.
Like
I get it.
it's got a very like old fashioned, when like Bonnie and Clyde was so new, and it's like so new to the point where like it's pretty much still the style now. Anyway, so this guy revolutionized film. But pretty much afterwards he kind of got forgotten, which I always thought was a shame, because this movie, Night Moves, I think is fantastic. I have no idea how I came across it. I don't remember it all, but watched it on a whim one day, thought it was great, and I want to rewatch it, so I recommend it for today. So yeah, let me give you a brief rundown. So after Bonnie and Clyde, his career kind of went into a slump, and he was kind of directionless, and he came across this script for Night Moves, and was like, wow, this Harry Mosby guy, he's just like me. He's kind of like, he's directionless. He kind of latches on to something just to like, have some sort of purpose, and he was like, he's just like me. I'm gonna latch on to this movie. It's really funny. Is Ellen Mosby, Harry Mosby's wife?
Hmm.
Yeah.
That role was originally offered to Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway turned down it to star in Chinatown, which is probably which is a movie that gets compared to this film a lot. And I'm sure you guys saw some parallels.
Here
But
and there.
you did tell us to go in with a similar mindset to Chinatown.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess one more piece of trivia is so Paula? Paula in Night Moves, she's the girl, not like the daughter, but the girl, whatchamacallit,
The one in Florida who's taking care of Deli.
yeah,
Stepmother?
yeah, you know her? So
Yeah.
basically, the writer met a lady like Paula in real life and was like, "This is such an interesting person. I'm gonna make a movie about him." And I always thought that was interesting because she's kind of like she's a secondary character, but she was like kind of where it started. And usually with hard-boiled detective movies, like people come up with like the detective first. And but no, Paula was the first character he conceptualized, and I always thought that was kind of interesting. And like she doesn't even show up to like halfway through the movie, so I always thought that was kind of interesting. And yeah, he kind of wanted this to be like a very real movie. He wanted to give like Mosby like more realistic like issues rather than like the more dramatic stuff that you'd see, and like, so he's not like an alcoholic, he's not, like, he doesn't owe money to the mob. His problems is he has marriage troubles. He feels like his career is like kind of wheel spinning. He doesn't have much satisfaction with his job anymore. It's like that kind of stuff. Also, one more fun fact: the movie was originally called Dark Tower, but they changed the title because they didn't want to get confused with the Towering Inferno. Dark
Isn't that
Tower
also the name of
also,
a Stephen King book? The Dark
yes,
Tower?
Stephen King
Ah.
did not have a career in 1973 though.
The name
So,
is also
Okay.
confusing because this movie doesn't really have much to do with a tower, if at all.
oh, also the movie was shot in 1973, but they waited 2 years for Melanie Griffith to turn 18 because they felt that it would be inappropriate to shoot some scenes with her being 16. So that's a fun fact. Ethical filmmaking, I guess. So this movie technically could have been released before Chinatown, but they didn't want to be a creep, which is kind of funny because Roman Polanski is a creep in real life.
I'm
So
surprised they didn't
yeah,
just recast.
apparently Melanie Griffith, Melanie Griffith is like, she's probably like the biggest star to come from this movie. Like she's like a huge star, so I kind of get it. Like she probably like just had like such like a great fucking audition that they're like, we have to, we have to do it with her. So they're just like, we'll just fucking wait 2 years before we finish the movie. That ought to feel good. Like they like you so much as an actor, they just delay the movie for 2 years for you. But anyway, we follow Harry Mosby, who's a retired professional football player who now works as a private eye. So it starts off as him just he gets hired to find a 6-year-old girl, and during his investigations, he also has to deal with his wife, where his relationship is fractured, and he later finds out that his wife is having an affair. Because of this affair, he basically kind of throws himself into his work, and he eventually so he goes to first New Mexico to track down one of the friends of the girl that went missing, and basically learns that she's like basically kind of like getting in touch with like people her like mom like used to have relationships with, and because of this he figured, hey, why don't we go to the the stepfather in the Florida Keys, and this is where he meets Paula and Tom, the stepfather, and the movie just then spends some time hanging out with them, and eventually it takes some time for him to convince her to come back, but eventually she agrees. But one day while during all this, they find a dead body in a lake, and what's funny is that this kind of starts off its own little mystery that's pretty much unrelated to the first one, which I always thought was kind of interesting. Like it's somewhat related, but it's also like not. The mystery doesn't really matter. All that matters is that we're following like a bunch of these interesting characters, and Deli, Melanie Griffith's character, is unfortunately a very damaged person who's not kind of treated well by society. She's kind of someone whose mom doesn't give a shit about her, and she's kind of learned to use her sexuality as a weapon, but also doesn't kind of realize that she's not really using, she's being used. She's not actually like as, I guess, clever as she thinks she is. You kind of learn that Tom is kind of like a, we dive into like some shady subject matter. She's kind of like the ultimate victim almost, and it's kind of sad. In fact, once this whole thing is kind of solved, he comes back, he patches up his relationship with his wife. Deli unfortunately dies in supposedly an accident, and this kind of like because Harry actually kind of missed a call from Deli, and because of this, he kind of feels like he has some responsibility. He kind of like focused on himself, but because of this, he kind of let her slip through the cracks. So he kind of focuses on this again. And one of my favorite scenes is actually when he meets Deli's mom again after this, and it's really interesting. It's such like hard to get like a read on the mom because like she's like clearly like a piece of shit, but you can tell like there's like some sort of grief that she's kind of repressing, but like we're not really sure.
Like she's drinking her
Um,
sorrows away, and like she's
and she,
trying to feel bad about it, but also at the same time you get
and
the
she
sense that she doesn't really care.
yeah, and she's like, I know it's gonna hurt one day, maybe not today, but it's gonna hurt one day, and she knows it, and she's just kind of preparing herself for that, I guess. And I thought that was kind of like a complex kind of exploration of kind of like emotions, which I haven't really seen before. Oh, also, I kind of like how this kind of references some kind of like other films. Like earlier, he's like, "Oh, you're gonna beat me up like Sam Spade." Sam Spade is like is a Humphrey Bogart character, kind of like a classic film noir thing, and they even reference like Eric Romer in a couple other movies, so it's kind of interesting. But there, but anyway, yeah. So I guess the movie's kind of broken up into like three parts. So like, first is him dealing with his marriage. Second is him finding this girl, and the third is this like separate kind of like conspiracy fraud thing. So the dead body they found earlier, that was because there was like money on that plane, you know. I don't know if you remember like a simple plan, but like imagine that there was like money in the plane or something, some like secret thing. And I guess they killed the girl because like they were just worried she knew too much or something. It's kind of unclear why she dies, but we know it's tied to this. And essentially like Harry kind of finds out that like, you know, that like the dead body was never reported, so he kind of like suspects, you know, some foul play or whatever. And then him and Paula go to set out to retrieve the relic, and this ultimately just leads to, like, a horrible series of events that kind of results in Paula dying. We're never really given like a clear understanding of what happened, and I honestly kind of like feel like that was intentional because I feel like part of the movie was like the first third of the movie we see Harry as like he is a passenger in his life. He's kind of like he's not really active. He doesn't really like take part in anything. He's just like observing. He's like an observer to other people's stories. But then after he comes back, he decides to like take agency. You know, he decides to actually like be active in this kind of like stuff with Delhi and whatnot. He's out of his depth. He doesn't have control, and at the end of the movie, he's left kind of spinning in circles, literally going in circles. And yeah, so I feel like this movie is much more kind of like abstract. I don't know if you guys have ever seen The Long Goodbye, but it kind of reminds me of like The Long Goodbye with like how it's kind of like more of a vibe movie than anything. But also kind of like Chinatown with sort of its nihilistic kind of helplessness. So I guess I sort of gave you my analysis mixed with a plot synopsis. But yeah, I don't know. If you guys have questions, because I saw this twice, I do understand the plot. So if you guys have any questions about that, you know, feel free. But yeah, let me know what your guys' thoughts are.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll start. I mean, if that's okay with you, Lugia.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So after hearing all that, I think I completely missed what this movie was. Let me start from the beginning. So you said go into this expecting something like Chinatown. So I'm like, okay, it's going to be a mystery
Like
movie with
Chinatown
a
mixed with The
tragic
Long
ending.
Goodbye.
I haven't seen The Long Goodbye, so Chinatown was my point of reference. But anyway, so I went in, all right, something like Chinatown, and then we get the main conflict, which is the daughter of this actress is missing, and he needs to find her while the movie is being filmed. And I'm like, oh, okay, so it's Chinatown meets The Fall Guy. All right, I'm down for that. So that's what the whole movie's going to be about. But 30 minutes in, he finds the daughter, and I'm like, oh, still over an hour left. What's going to happen now? And it went in an interesting direction, but I was very confused by all of the side plots going on with, you know, Harry solving the case, but he's also dealing with his wife. He's reminiscing about the issues he had with his dad, and also reminiscing about being an athlete. And I'm like, okay, what's this all leading to? And it didn't. None of them really connected to anything, and I was like, huh? Hearing your analysis about how he's kind of meandering in his life, that I'm like, oh, okay. I completely
Yeah,
missed everything then.
yeah, here's something I guess I probably should I'm starting to like realize with all the movies I like character pieces a lot, and a lot of character pieces they don't really have like points to them. They're just about kind of exploring people. When you guys are much more like I guess narrative inclined because I guess like
Yeah, that my
character pieces
mindset
don't really
is on the narrative. So
Honestly, yeah, I'm
m-
on the same
most
boat as Patrick. I felt like things just
I
happened
think
in
that's just
this
because like
movie
you
with
guys
almost
aren't
no
like
rhyme or reason.
yeah,
well, no, there's
yeah.
obviously like reason. It's just like I guess they kind of like character pieces have kind of like fallen out of fashion like the last few decades. So you guys just aren't like used to that. I feel, but like yeah,
Probably.
no, I feel like everything
Yeah.
like has a rhyme or reason to it. At least like you know thematically and character wise, and story does
Again,
make sense. They just
I
don't
did like the
you know
main
portray them
mystery
straightforward.
regarding the
Yeah.
daughter and everything going on in Florida. I was just a lot of the other stuff I couldn't really get into. Not that it was bad. It's
Uh,
just I feel like
yeah,
this is a movie that I can categorize in the I'm gonna have to watch it again. Like as is, I thought it was good.
yeah. I mean, I figured this was gonna be a movie you guys would need to rewatch.
Now, when you said it was
Anyway,
similar to Chinatown, I was expecting the end twist to be like gut punching, like Chinatown. I don't think it was as bad, and I think part of the reason why is because Deli dies like earlier on in the film, and I think that's supposed to be like the real like shock moment because we just spent all this time going to Florida to get her back and bring her home.
yeah, she basically immediately dies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, not to say that like the ending was like bad or anything like that, far from it. It just didn't hit as hard.
Well, I just like want to prepare you because I also told you it was like No Country for Old Men. I just want to like to prepare you that like it's not you're not getting a satisfying narrative. It's basically just gonna end with like a guy sitting there being like, "What the fuck?" And then it ends because that's basically like how No Country for Old Men. Just like a bunch of people died, and he's just like, "Man, what the fuck?" You can tell I kind of like I guess I like character pieces, and I like I'm fine with being like unsatisfied because that's like a running theme, I
The
guess.
middle of this movie did completely throw me for a loop when the whole thing with the plane and the dead body comes up. Because it's funny, they're in the boat, they're going for a night swim, and I jokingly said to myself, "This is a 1975 movie," and Jaws came out that same year, so like I hope nothing bad happens. And then a dead body, I'm like, "Holy shit, I was kidding." So at that point, it's Chinatown meets The Fall Guy meets Jaws. How funny would it be though if Ellie suddenly got attacked by a shark and the whole movie just became he needs to go after the shark now?
They do get into the boat later on. They might
They
end it the
do.
same way. Aside from the plane crashing. Well, no, remember in Jaws 2? The shark took down a fucking helicopter. He could do that with a plane.
Forget jumping the shark. The shark is eating the plane. No, that ending that ending plane crash, like the sound design on that like got me like the
I did
that
like
was
the
excellent.
metaphor of him like going around in a circle. Like this is just like how his life's become. Like trying to keep a broken marriage intact only to no avail, and he keeps getting dragged back into the private investigation business, much to his dismay.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Coen brother movie, A Serious Man, but part of it reminded me of that, where like that whole movie is about like kind of a dude who's like just kind of aimlessly drifting through life, and then the second he actually like takes some action in his life, God and his cosmic cruelty just kind of like fucks him over, and then it just kind of ends on like a note where you're just like, damn, what's going on? Like, again, I compared to No Country for Old Men, so I guess there's a very like 2000s Coen brother vibe to me, I guess. So I don't know if my viewers like that, check this out. But yeah, one day I'm gonna get you guys like loose narrative films that aren't just hangout movies, because hangout movies have like a different vibe. Because like I know you guys liked
Dazed and Confused.
Do the
because
right
those are like
thing.
comedies. Like comedies work, I guess. They the only movies they make nowadays that are really plotless or like that are like loose in plot are comedies. That's what I've noticed. They don't really make many like character pieces that are like less that aren't like driven by like a very like clear cut narrative. I just like this movie because I like kind of just getting absorbed in the atmosphere, and I thought the characters were interesting, and ultimately I do think there is like a strong narrative arc. It's just kind of like, and there is a strong mystery. It's just like kind of buried under like layers of obfuscation. So again, like second go around, now that I told you my analysis, this will probably like go down easier second way around, as you can like much more clearly see kind of Harry's character arc, and like if you kind of know where things are going, like mystery wise, like have you guys ever seen Game of Thrones?
Nope. Not a single episode.
One thing I've always like mentioned to people is like, so a lot of people, they always like mysteries, they always like twists. I've often felt that like there are some stories where like knowing the twist actually makes it better. So like Game of Thrones season one, it's a little bit of a drag if you don't know what is leading towards. So you guys know what happens at the end of Game of Thrones season one, right?
Hmm.
No.
Ned Stark. Okay.
I know nothing about Game of
Let me tell
Thrones.
you,
Yeah, I know
there's a
that's a joke too,
Starbucks
but
cup.
oh,
No,
that's
no.
in a later
Okay,
season.
so I'm talking about season one. Okay. Sean Bean plays a Sean Bean character. That's your hint, I guess. Okay,
I'm
so the
probably
main
never
character,
gonna watch Game of Thrones, so you can
I'll just tell
spoil
you.
it.
Okay, so
Unless
basically,
unless Lugia has plans to watch it.
Not anytime soon.
I'll probably forget
it's
the twist
fine.
because somebody did tell me
It's
how Game of
fine.
Thrones ended. I already forgot.
It's fine. Like it's not like I said, you're gonna like him more because here's the thing. With Game of Thrones season one, you basically follow this character called Eddard Stark, played by Sean Bean. And throughout the whole thing, he's kind of unraveling this kind of sort of mystery and stuff and whatnot. And at the end, he dies. Here's the thing. Eddard, it's the first time we watch the show, it's a little bit of a drag just because like is like he's an honorable character, so he kind of refuses to play the games as everyone else. And because of that, like he's a little bit kind of frustrating, kind of boring compared to other people. But once you actually like know that this is like ending in a tragedy, suddenly it's a lot more like interesting because like now you're like when you watch it this a second time around, you're seeing all those like fuck ups and whatnot. And I kind of feel like this is like one of those like like I remember when I first saw this movie, I was like I was like, yo, this is all right. I kind of like the vibe and atmosphere, and like I like the characters, but like I wasn't saying like it was amazing. But then the ending happened. I was like, man, what the fuck? It's like I need to watch this so I can like understand it again. And like on the second watch through, I was like, like once you mull over it a bit, like once you know where everything is going, I feel like a lot of these movies kind of like stick better just because like you're like, oh, okay, like his marriage is fucked up. Then he goes to like Florida, he meets all these characters, and that kind of like motivates him to sort of like try to fix his marriage. But then like she dies, and he was like, oh, like he he feels this responsibility. There's also a little bit of guilt about the fact that he kind of like ignored that phone call to focus on this. So like he gets motivated for this again, and it's like kind of ties into like earlier, he was just throwing himself because into this just because as a distraction from his shitty life. We're here now; it's much more like he actually cares about these people. And I mean, I guess you feel this like the first time around too, but it's just because of like the gut punch of the ending. It like leads you that it's like all like messed up and stuff. And it's like, oh, like I don't know. I feel like sometimes like knowing how stuff ends or knowing the twist or like knowing all this shit, it a lot of times like I don't like to judge like there's some movies where like I don't like to judge it off the first go around because you can just tell when watching it that's like if I watch it another time, it's probably gonna like click a lot more. And I feel like this is like kind of a
Right.
quintessential one of those
Yeah,
movies, you
and
know?
I don't doubt it for this movie. Again, this is one I will rewatch at some
I
point.
mean, going off a personal example, that's happened with me in the past. I remember when we first watched Blue Velvet, I'm like, what the fuck is this shit? And then I rewatched it. I'm like, oh, now I get it. You know what? The same thing happened with Nowhere. I hold a lot more respect for that movie now than the first time I saw it.
What's fun is I was thinking about Blue Velvet while watching this movie too. In fact, like I was planning on watching Blue Velvet today, just unrelated to this. So like it's funny that you mentioned that. I was like, but yeah. Overall, I highly recommend the movie. Any final thoughts from you guys?
Nothing that we haven't said before. Again, this definitely deserves a rewatch. I don't think it's bad in
Mhm.
the slightest. It's just something that might need some more time in the oven for me anyway. I don't think it was better than Chinatown, just to compare it to something, but it still had its moments.
Yeah, I debate whether I like it more than Chinatown, honestly, because I really like Chinatown. Like I feel like there's something like there's a quality to Chinatown that's like really like electrifying, but I like the characters here like I guess a little bit more. Like I guess that's the way I describe it. Where like I feel like everything else about Chinatown is better, but I just like really like the characters here. Also, that's like a crazy ass ending. Just unrelated, just from like a pure spectacle level. I thought it was crazy. Like you can see like the plane like gunning down the ship, and then it breaks in half, and then you see like through like the plane at the bottom, like you see the dude drown. Like I just thought that was like a crazy fucking image. Like just visually, I was like, wow, I've never like seen something like this before. Good movie, recommend it. What you got in tune for us next week?
All
That
right.
would be Lugia's choice.
I got a bit of a weird one this time. So, are you
Okay.
guys at all familiar with director Albert Pune?
Off the top of
How
my
do you
head,
spell his
no.
last name?
Pyun.
Pyun. Albert Pyun. Albert Pyun. It seems a little familiar. I feel like he made like some 80s like action movies, B movies or something, right?
Something of the
I have
sort.
seen Captain America. He directed the 90s Captain America movie. I saw that a long time
Um,
ago.
looking at his filmography,
Oh, he made some Jean-Claude Van
no,
Damme movies.
nothing. I don't recognize anything here.
I've seen a few of his movies and like I've heard good things. One of my friends really likes the movie Nemesis that he made.
The only one that looks kind of familiar is Cyborg, but even then, I'm not 100%.
I didn't really know who
Uh
he was. Hell, I didn't even know he made a movie that I saw like a year ago called Mean Guns, which is just Danganronpa, but if Monokuma was Ice-T. But there was a movie of his that I have been interested in looking at, and it's purely just on the name alone. So, this movie shares the same name as an infamous Super Famicom game. It's called Hong Kong 97, but
What?
but it came out in 1994, so kind of a lie.
Hong Kong 97?
Yes.
Is this a movie we should watch together?
I
What year did it come out
Probably
again?
not. It came out in 1994.
Hong Kong 97. I see it.
It has nothing to
Robert
do with the
Patrick.
game. It just shares the name. I don't know why.
Oh, dang. And apparently, he also directed a movie called The Wrecking Crew. So, if I had a nickel for the number of movies from this guy that share the name of the video game that is not based on the video game, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Really funny that Robert Patrick starred in this like just a few years after Terminator 2. Next week, Hong Kong 97, 1994, directed by Albert Pune.
With no relation to the 1995 Super Nintendo game. Alright, you got a closer?
Something something chess, night moves. I'm making moves, I'm making night moves. I'm going in circles.